G'day viewers, back to the XC again finally. We'll try and get the front end put back together today. Now, sandblasted, well washed, sandblasted and painted all the front end parts. I won't bore you with making me watch, start that again. I won't bore you with making you watch me do that because that took hours and that was a pain in the ass. Anyway, here's the bits. Okay, here's the bits, all nice and cleaned and sandblasted and painted up. So we'll start. We'll put the lower spring mounts in place on the control arms, wishbones, what you want to call them. Now right and left are the same. I haven't bothered to rebush these. They're in very good condition, so not much point changing that. That goes at the back. Okay, just a quick mention here, I put new isolators on the bottom, new rubber isolators, and if anybody's using second-hand springs, take note, the springs are a different height, right and left. Now, my first thought years ago was the fact that the taller spring would go in the left to make up for the camber of the road, but no, the taller spring goes in the right to make up for the driver, because you've got a driver in the car always and a passenger sometimes. So yeah, tall spring goes the right side. Rightio. Okay, now the hardest part about putting these springs in, well, A is having a decent spring compressor, but B is trying to finish up with that tail in the right spot. It can be challenging. And also having enough light to see what you're doing can be fun. I think I'm going to have to wind that spring compressor down a bit further. Okay. Let's try again. Got it the right way up, it might work better too. In. Now we need, we're all centered. Now no point putting it on the bottom one because it's going to get jammed up. The second one up, and we'll take the slack and make sure the isolator doesn't get pinched at the top. It's got to sit over a lip. So nice and slow. Not sitting where it needs to. It's sitting around about where it needs to. Now you can take this off if you want to. It does make it a little easier, but not absolutely necessary. Yeah, so we can actually manage to wind that up with that in about that spot. It should work alright. Bit of a trial and error type thing. Once this goes in easy, should got a bit more to go yet. Should all be fairly simple. Actually we're nearly there because we haven't got much trouble left. Look at that. Beautiful. Got a couple of nuts on the other side. And we're cooking. Okay, so put that in there, and we'll see if we can get the spring to go down in just the right spot. Fingers crossed. And as you can see, we're trying to line up the bottom of the spring there. Okay, so we get this spring here to line up as close as we possibly can in there. Get this spring to line up as close as we possibly can to that, and we'll have the spring sit here and around here. Okay, so looking good there so far. We'll see how we go coming down. Okay, so lights off it. Didn't quite come onto there, but it will as the load starts to go onto it. But the important thing is we've got the spring located properly at the other end. Okay, so we might as well whack the shockies in while we're at the right height. 3 dim lamps from the top. Onto there, like so. Now these can be a pain in the ass, just because they're awkward to get at. Barely enough room to get the rubber on and the washer and then a nut. So, and also the fact that this is tilted a little bit, I'll probably have to put a little bar on that to get a little bit of leverage. And the back one is just as much a pain in the ass. So I've got to lift the shocky a little bit to get the rubber in because it's so close to the centre, and then the same with the washer. I'll try and show you when we get to this side of it. And so that, and if I can do, great, the washer falls out. Won't go in, falls out easy. Try again. And 2 fingers. Ah, you gotta love working on motor cars. Okay, and a nut. If I can get that up there. Trying to get all 3 to stay there. Can be, let's call it challenging, shall we? Okay, in place. Couple of twists, hopefully. And maybe, pretty pleased. And yeah, I think we've got a thread or 2. Not much more than that, but that'll do for a start, I think. The trouble with them is they are so close to the little trouble with these is they're so close to this little boss area here. You've got to slide the rubber up in the gap, slide the washer to suit, especially on the back side. So you've got to up on the angle, up and in. This side looking pretty easy just because it's tilted the way we want it. But as you can see, there's not enough sticking through to get a washer on. So I have to get a lever to lever this side up to get that one started. So just stand by. Okay, a little bit of playing around. I can't tilt this any further because it hits on the wishbone at the back. So I'm going to try and muscle it into place. It may or may not work. I don't know. I don't need much, just a start on those first couple of threads. And by George, I think we've got it. Look at that. Okay, now the next fun bit is doing them up because there's not hardly any gap around them to get a spanner on it. So what I usually use is a 1/4 drive short socket, knuckle joint extension, bring it down here where you can work on it, down below. If you do it while there's no steering arms and that in place, that's even easier. So I'll get some spanners and we'll have a look at that. Alright, a couple more spanners and we'll give it a crack, see how we go. And I'm very fortunate that I've got a hell of a lot of tools. Not everybody's going to be that lucky. But having the right ones makes it easy. You can do this with 3/8 drive and probably a challenge with 1/2 drive stuff. Anyway, I'll do it the easy way if I can. Okay, they're only a 1/2 inch. So they don't have to be super tight. When I put the shocky tower top on, it'll pull the shocky over and sort of pull this over a little bit too, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge until there's a bit of weight on it to even get the shocky top on. Okay, that's those done. They're positive stops, so you just do them up till they go hard. You don't have to tighten the ring out of them, but yeah, once they go hard they're done. And that's it for that part of this side. Now I'm only going to show you doing one side, no point torturing them to show both sides, it's all the same. So I'll assemble the rest of this side and then we'll skip to the rest of the steering arms and what have you after I've got the other side assembled. Okay, so upper ball joints in, which is next. Don't need any mega tight, they're not a very big bolt. Okay, and the same on the other side. Okay, so spindles go on. Okay, so top and bottom. Okay, so get these done up. Again, don't be mega tight. And line up the split pin holes with the castle nuts. Okay. Once the holes are lined up, you can call me anal if you like, but I get a little fussy. But like the whole point of this exercise with this car was to make it look pretty. Well, I put new springs in, but all the sandblasting and painting and that. So again, just down to the neatness side of things. Really attention to detail on how you put these in. I mean, any mug can put a split pin in. But anyway, I'll just show you, and like I say, you call me anal if you like, but this is how I do it. Okay, so it's not much, but it's just putting the split pin in, and hey, rather than just bend it over any old way and make a mess, I like to do it like this, just because it looks tidier. And cut that off, trim that off a little bit, and then bend that bit up that way, and there. Like I say, there's not much, but rather than just having them all bent, now you might as well just stick a nail through it and bend it if you're going to be rough about it. Okay, next up, radius rods, I should say. Yeah. Not putting new bushes on the other end because the ones in it were practically new. Nylon type bush. They were fairly stubborn coming out, so they might get a bit of persuading going in. Couple of nuts. Now these take a couple of split pins on the bottom. Now I've just showed you how I normally do split pins, but these ones from memory, they'll just poke through and spread from original. So that's all I do with these ones, rather than trying to turn them inside out and around and around. Put them in, spread them, shorten up the ends a little bit just to make them look tidy, and that should be fine. As I said, I had these cars when they were new, and from what I can remember, because I didn't pay that much attention, they'll just put through and spread. They won't fall out, so they're only just out like so, and nipped off. Right, that's that. Washer and a nut on the front. Okay, now these front ones are positive stops, so you can't really overdo them. So you can go fairly tight, like so. And that's that bit. And the same on the other side. Okay, so now the aftermarket sway bar. Nice big sucker. Just so I'd have something to struggle with. Say hi, Harry.
Hi. Hi. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that wasn't supposed to happen. Nope. Sometimes an extra pair of hands wouldn't go astray, but anyway. Now these are the type of bushes you're not supposed to grease putting them in, so we won't grease them. Oh, going good. Now it's upside down, I think. Third time lucky, maybe. What a roll today. Now, these aftermarket ones are slotted, but not much room for them to move anyway. So I think we'll put the links in first before I tighten the bottom up. Now we're recycling the ones that were in it because they're the Nolithane style one, which seemed to be in reasonable condition. Okay. Some of you may or may not have noticed that I don't edit out all my oopsies. Mainly, it shows when something is a pain in the ass that it's really a pain in the ass. So, anyway, that's that in there. And I'll just whack one on the other side, and we can tighten them up. Of course, there's another side to me not editing out the mistakes. It gives you one something to laugh at. Which, you know, everybody deserves a bit of entertainment. Now you may have noticed how I put this way up, I put the washers. Now this is how they used to be years ago. And what I remember, Commodores, the ones that started turning up with them up the other way. So they're dished upwards instead of downwards. Now you can just put them up if you want, whichever way works for you. Anything, if you do it this way, you need to pay attention a bit about how much you're actually going to squash the rubber. If you wind it down as hard as it'll go, probably it'll squash the rubber too much. So if you just watch it and see it, you'll feel it and see it. It's starting to squash the hell out of the rubber, you're probably getting a bit too tight. So you just sort of keep going, it'll snug up and start to squish you out a little bit. Well, you don't want it squashing out a little bit, it's got to be snug, but you don't want it popping out like a hernia either. So, and then you find you won't always wind them right down to hit that final stopper. And if you do, especially with these nylon type bushes, you'll squash the shit out of them. So, anyway, I find that way works pretty well like that. Okay, that's that bit. Okay, so just putting the splash guards and One of these little dust slingers or whatever you want to call them. Back on again. Look at that. They only go one way, as much as the bolt holes aren't even. If you get it wrong, it won't fit. Careful. How much these dust shields actually make a difference is sort of debatable. But anyway. And the same on the other side. Okay, now, wheel bearings. A contentious subject, surprisingly. To me it's pretty simple. Get as much grease in as you can. Now, packing the bearing one thing, then filling the hub with grease is another thing, and a bit of grease in the cap for good measure. Now, I've had some pretty good arguments with people over this. Some people will just put grease on the bearing, and that's all they're happy with. And I've been doing this for over 50 years now. If you just grease the bearing, it's going to fail eventually, I guarantee it. Grease in the hub. When the bearing warms up, the grease that's in the hub will spread out and add to what's in the bearing. Also, centrifugal force will help force it out into the bearing. Either way, the bearing gets plenty of grease. If it fails through old age, so be it. But if it fails from lack of grease, it won't happen if you do it how I do it. So, you can do it my way or you can do it another way. The choice is always yours. But, you can use bearing packers for packing the grease. You can do them by hand, how I always do, but as long as that's full of grease. But as far as filling the hub, that's the one people want to argue with me about, and it just amazes me. Anyway, so there's for packing. Doesn't take very long doing this until you get it starting to squeeze through there. I don't know if you can see it. And around a bit more. Just keep on doing that till you get it all the way around. Doesn't take long. If you wear a pair of gloves, you can chuck them in the bin after you're finished. Saves a bit of clean up too. Something I've only recently started doing is using gloves. So, yeah. There you go, you can see it greased through it pretty much everywhere. Put a little bit of coating over the rest of it, but the middle of the bearing is packed with grease. That's the important thing for there. And little one, the outer bearing. Again, the outer ones are even easier because you can stick the finger in the hole, stop the grease coming through the middle. Doesn't take long before you get grease squirting out through the middle of it. Once it's coming through there, middle of the bearing full of grease, so you're laughing. Okay, so just finish the other two of these over here, and then we'll do the bit that people want to argue with me about. Like I said, you can do it any way you want. But in the end, if you do it my way and I'm wrong, what's the worst going to happen? You're going to use an extra 50 cents worth of grease. If you do it the other way and I'm right, cost your wheel bearing, maybe a stub axle, maybe a wheel, maybe an accident. So better safe than sorry. Well, some people will agree with me outright, but like I said, I've been amazed at how many people want to argue the point. Okay, another one. That's the last. There we go. All ready to go. Okay. Okay, yeah, putting the seal in, these are going to be about the easiest. Sealing nice and flat on the other side. Plenty of ways to put them in. You can use a socket, you can use a special sealing tool. In this case it's just a block of steel, because these are nice flat ones on the top. Simple as that. Alright, second one. And same again. Okay, all down nice and even. Simple. Okay, now packing the hub with grease. Now we've got a well here, in and around the bearing. We just want to fill it up. It's not real technical. Bit of finger work. Okay, keep wiping it in there until you get all filled in except for just a hole about as big as your finger going through the middle. In the process, you'll have noticed I didn't put any grease on the seal, but in no way known was I going to do this without getting grease all over the seal, so it gets done in the process. Keep filling it up. And when you miss this side, you can top up from the other side. And you won't get it 100% full. We're looking for about 80. But okay. So I don't know how well you can see that, but right. I'll wipe the back of it, of course, but the idea is to make it fairly full. And we'll do the other one the same. Well, you've got to leave a hole through the middle. You're only going to poke it out with a stub axle when you put it on. But after you've done it a few times, you sort of work out how much you can get to stay in there and how much you're going to come out. Okay, now last thing we need to do is give these rotors a wipe over. They're covered in a, well, besides the grease I've got on them, but they're covered in an anti-rust coating, which won't do much for your brake pads. Now, I'm normally fairly liberal with the brake cleaner, but on these ones, apparently, the paint on this side is a heat treatment. It changes colour depending on how hot they are. So, and it says, don't wash it off. So, I won't wash it off. Okay, one. One down. To finish off, I'll just wipe the grease off around the back. There we go, ready to put on. Okay, putting the rotors on and tightening up the wheel bearings. Not too technical. Once you've done it once, it's not rocket science. However, wheel bearing tension is something I found really hard to explain to people. It's something you've got to develop a feel for. The book will tell you something like assemble it all, tighten the bearing to 30 Newton meters or similar, back it off half a turn, re-tighten it to 2 Newton meters and secure it, something like that. And that's well and good. No problem with that. But it is possible to do a fairly accurate job by hand once you've had some practice. It's, again, using the big spanner, but I only need a little bit of it. It's just a case of running it up. You feel it go hard all of a sudden. There you go, going hard. New bearings are going hard. Okay, and just you know, I can swing on that and bend it further around, but it's taking up the slack. There. Okay, so we just back off just a smidgen. Don't need much. Right. Turns beautiful. And the beauty of these Ford ones is, great idea by Ford, these little jiggers, is the fact that they'll fit on anywhere. I love them. Unlike some, like that one bent. And then you bent one a little tagged over, and it happens to be the one I want. Probably should have noticed it first. But yeah, great idea, these things. Seeing other manufacturers can come up with something this simple and effective. And no matter where it lands, you don't have to adjust it any further, any tighter, any looser. If you're happy with it, you'll find a place somewhere where that'll fit. Okay. Split pin. Now, we talked about split pins earlier. Which way do I bend them on this? Well, it's just a personal preference really, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's secure. And you can bend it that way and you can bend it over and back down. Or you can turn it that way. and wrap one each direction. I like it that way. It engages better into the little lock. Bring it round into there. Okay. Grab my soy cutters. And then we'll just snip off the extra. We don't need all this. Coming out here. Just enough on the end there to bend around the corner. There you go, you can see. One that way, one that way. They've not only, my preference, not only got to do the job, no reason why it can't look good doing it, or look neat. And if it looks neat when you first look at it, especially if you do it for a customer, it looks better. They're happier about it. Not that many customers are going to get in here, but some may. And put the cap on now. About a third filled the cap with grease. Put too much in, you won't get the cap on. About a third full. And if it's not going to go on, you can find a socket that will fit perfectly over it. So much the better. Right, I'll go and have a look see if I can, otherwise I'll show you plan B. Okay, so 1 3/4 drive socket. Grabbed it just. I haven't been bored enough to sit there and make one of my lathe to do this, which I could have done, but this is how I usually put trailer ones on, but they've got a bigger flange to tap on. So that's on there, pretty much perfect. Got a bit of a wipe up. There we go, and repeat on the other side.